p.m. Mr. Roberts, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Barnes?
Present.
Mr. George?
Here.
Ms. Green?
Here.
Mrs. Talley?
Here.
Mr. Twist?
Here.
Now we will stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any additions or deletions to our agenda this evening?
There are not.
All right, I need a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes. Motion carries. We will proceed with our first presentation this evening, and we will hear from CWEA.
Good evening. There's quite a bit going on in our schools as we head towards our winter break. The second graders at Indian Trail are eagerly awaiting their field trip to see the Nutcracker Ballet this week. Also, Ms. Hazel Baker's second grade class has been busy collecting data for their decomposing pumpkin lab, in which they will experience the life cycle of a pumpkin. Currently, they are witnessing the decomposition process, which will net new pumpkins this March. Preschool also has been very busy planning a Grinch Day coming up on math and the arts. Mrs. Logston's and Mrs. Boyd's fifth grade gifted ELA students were currently engaged in the Poetry and Figurative Language unit. This unit emphasizes the discovery of the poetic structures, devices such as a metaphor, a simile, alliteration, and personification, as well as encouraging the creativity through reading and composing poetry. The students are also learning how to use vivid vocabulary words and emphasize tone and mood. On December 17th, these students will participate in an enriching educational experience at the Thurber House in Columbus, Ohio. The visit will include a poetry writing workshop led by an educational director to enhance their understanding of poetry. This initiative session will allow the students to apply their knowledge of figurative language while developing original poetic works. The students will also tour the home of James Thurber, celebrated author, humorist, and poet, who lived in the house from 1921 to 1960. The museum tour will provide historical context for Thurber's literary contributions and insight to the life and times of this influential figure. Over at the middle school, 7th grade ELA students are studying Phineas Gage, Bob Woodruff, and Gabby Gifford and their traumatic brain injury cases. The students will be asked to construct and compare and contrast essay, making sure to use textual evidence from each case in order to draw comparisons and contrast their injuries and recoveries. This informational text unit pairs well with Mrs. Shiflett's 7th grade medical detectives class, where they also study the human brain and the different lobe locations. That's it.
Wow, awesome. Those are very much exciting things. Thank you. Our next presentation will be our Master Facilities Planning update.
Okay, thank you very much. This is our opportunity, as everyone here knows, the board knows, we've spent the last 4 or 5 months really working on a master facilities project where we've looked at focus groups, we've put surveys out, we've had different teams that have taken information back from our community and then had discussions on where we go from here. So we'd like to just spend some time and share with you all what we would like to do in our proposal as we move forward. So just a reminder, through our CW promise, we do have our strategic plan does address a goal on master facility planning. And specifically, the goal here would be to strategically plan and develop facilities that foster community pride and optimize resources to ensure inclusive spaces for all.
Sorry.
That's okay. So phase one, where we want to start. First would be a performing arts center. So the performing arts center, again, we're still haven't even really gotten started in the design stage of it, but we believe that it would be 800 plus seat performing arts center. The performing arts center would be connected to Canal Winchester High School, which will provide opportunities for not only after school activities, but also then opportunities for classes that could happen during the day, as well as obviously using the performing arts center for class meetings, whatever it may need to be. And then also we would renovate our current music spaces to ensure that we are using our space as best as possible. Here is just a picture with our SHP. They presented to us both in October and November, and they've used these renditions. So here is a possible look of what the Performing Arts Center could look like from the outside. And then the next picture here would be a look of potential what the Performing Arts Center could look like from the inside. One thing to note, again, this is just a quick rendition. We are not believing that we would need the upper level, so just really an idea of what the lower level would look like. So with a Performing Arts Center and where it would need to go on the high school site, there are changes that would need to happen outdoors because of that addition. So those changes would need to be additional parking. That additional parking, the lot that would be included would actually go into some of our current athletic facilities. And so we would need a new baseball diamond with a press box storage and concession stand. We would need to add 2 new softball diamonds. Those also would have the press box storage and concession stand. We would relocate the fuel pumps. One of the things, not sure if you've been on the high school site, but as you're driving back behind the building, we do have the fuel pumps, which we currently use for our own buses, as well as the city uses it for city vehicles. That is just in a really poor location for us as we look at adding on a performing arts center. So that would move. We're looking at different areas that would move it over here, closer to the Ed Center, which would move that traffic away from the high school building. We would also look at updating the current band practice field. We would look at getting a new traffic flow that would connect the north campus to the south campus. And then also it would add additional green spaces. Basically, it would be grass area that you could practice on, different soccer programs could practice on, the football team could practice on it, and so forth. And those items that I just discussed would need to happen because of the addition of the Performing Arts Center. We are also proposing that we do the additional outdoor improvements that would come from the project at the same time. Number one, having all the equipment that would be here, tearing up the fields, it just makes sense to go ahead and get it all done at one time. So some of the things that would happen here, we are making a recommendation to relocate the drive that currently connects the high school to the education center. I'm not sure if you've been back behind, but it actually, we have a maintenance building, which I'll talk about next, but that road goes up to the maintenance building and then back down, and it takes away a lot of green space that we actually have that we could use for additional practice space. So we're also looking to relocate the maintenance building somewhere closer to us here at the education center, and that would add a very large green space to be used for multiple practice fields. We would also look at adding 3 additional tennis courts, which would give us a total of 9 tennis courts, and we would also add parking for the tennis courts as well. Another addition that we are making the recommendation for is the field house. And I know the last time that SHP was here presenting, there were a lot of questions around, well, what does a field house actually look like? Throughout the whole process, we have thrown everything out from a new competition gym to indoor track to a field turf, to stadium locker rooms, et cetera. So we have taken a lot of time and we are going to make the recommendation that the field house includes locker rooms for the stadium sports, restrooms for the stadium sports, an athletic training room. I put here 60 by 60. This is a dream. This is a very large space. We have to look at that. It might jump down to 40 by 60, 50 by 50. We're not quite sure. But we would like to have a large facility with turf inside, as well as a weight room, coach's office space, and a team meeting room. One of the things that we really discussed about this field house is what can we gain that has the most impact on our current students and athletes. And we believe that the turf space would basically be used for 100% of our athletes as well as our band students. So our band could go in and practice their competition, their routine that they would do during the football games and during their competition. We could have track athletes would be in there for their starting, using hurdles, whatever it may be. You could also, all of your students would be in there from the weight room facility and then going in and doing both strength and conditioning, agility work. So this is something that we currently don't have here, the ability to have all of that. Also, baseball, softball could currently be in there. For both infield, for baseball, softball, there would be enough space as well as for batting cages. Also, with the proposal that we have in our phase 1 would be repurposing our current athletic spaces. So out by the football complex, we currently have a weight room facility. We would look at repurposing that. Again, this is all discussion still to be had. One of the ideas we had is for the turf area, there's about a 15-yard space, a small area of turf. That could become our golf room, which could have simulators as well as a putting green in it. And then the larger area for what's currently the weight room could potentially be indoor hitting bays for baseball, softball. Potentially it could be coaching offices. It could be film rooms, meeting space. Again, those would all become conversations, but one of our main things that we know we have to do is to reuse the spaces if we move it to the new field house. The current stadium home team locker room, we would propose that would move to the visiting team locker room. And the current visiting team locker room, again, we would look at having that be officials room, a training room space for the game days, also potential more coaching room space. And then the Ox Gym, we would look at, it's currently the wrestling gym. It shares with some other things. We would look at making the Ox Gym the wrestling gym, 100%. And then we would also look at our current competition gym, making improvements to it. So we would recommend removing the lower bleachers on both sides. If you've been in that space, you've noticed the team usually sits on the front bleacher. There's very little space between the bleacher and the court space. So what we would like to do, and you can see a picture here, we would remove that lower level. On the team side, what we would do is get chairs so that the team bench on both sides would sit on chairs. And then we would also have a scorer's table that would be in the middle. You could sit that back, and that way you also don't have fans walking in front of the team benches during the games, which causes some potential just safety issues, as well as it's just not great to have fans in front of the team bench. On the opposite side, then, we would also remove the lower level benches, and we would bring in new bleachers, which would create space for ADA compliance. We currently in this gym do not have a spot for anybody that would be wheelchair bound. And then also we could talk through what those lower level bleachers look like. We could potentially make them a nicer bleacher with backs, which then we could potentially sell for reserve seating. We would also look at updating, renovating, or relocating the current athletic training room within the high school near the competition gym. And then we would update, renovate the team locker rooms if needed. Here is a picture of the outside area of the high school of what we would be considering the phase 1. So I'm just going to go through here. Nick, if you could with your cursor maybe. Yep, perfect. So the first is the red box in the middle. That would be the new Performing Arts Center. If you notice, that's right smack dab in the middle of the parking lot that we would have there. So we would definitely have to gain quite a bit of parking there, which you see above. Also, just a note over to the left, which is our football stadium. We are currently adding bleachers, stadium on both home side and visiting side. That is a huge safety issue. If you've been to any games where we have a good sized crowd, there's not enough seats for all of our students to sit. And that's going to be something moving forward. We're going to require all of our students, both middle school and high school, to be in a bleacher seat, which will help us with safety at the stadium. But with those new seats, we got a waiver, so to speak, from the city that because they know we're doing a project, we could have parking be added down the road. We also can use some field space, which we do now, grass space for parking. But that parking lot that we're adding here provides us the parking limit for both the PAC and the football stadium. And then if you notice, that new parking lot does go into the baseball field. The baseball field, what you see, the new green is actually a softball field. The current baseball field actually extends out into that parking lot. So we would move the baseball field over to the left top that you see there. So that would be our new baseball field. The red box is a quick rendition of a press box / storage / concession stand, so to speak. And then we would have 2 softball fields, which would be our softball hub. Again, the red box is to signify the press box storage area. And then the green practice field areas that you see up top, finishing off, would be the practice fields green space that we could use. And the shot and discus would stay in the same location that we have now. We would be able to keep that in the same location. So what we just talked about there briefly that I showed to you would have to happen with the addition of the PAC. Because of what we jump into with the baseball field, it moves everything from where we need to then have the baseball field to softball fields, and the new practice fields would be moved. And then moving into what we're recommending above and beyond, you see the field house area would be the red box. Again, that would be close enough to the football stadium to have the restrooms, the locker rooms in there for football games, and then also have the field turf and be space that our students could use pretty much 24/7 throughout the school year. Moving on over to the right side, you see the marching band practice field. That's located there. We named that specific field because it will be located close to the Performing Arts Center and the band room. And then the other 3 spaces back behind there that you see hidden is the maintenance building. You can kind of see where the roads were. We would take the maintenance building and move it over to the right, back here by the Ed Center. Make that area all green space that could be used for practice fields. The roadways, I failed to mention those. The roadway here would be the new location, the new drive to get from the high school to the Ed Center. Cleans up the tennis court areas. We add the extra 3 tennis courts to give us 9. And then we add parking lot space, which we currently do not have. And then also, just to go back and mention the drive that we would create that would connect the north side to the south side of the high school. And last but not least on this plan, I think, is to just show where the fuel pump is, taking that spot there, and you would see where it's going to from where it was. So that would all be our phase 1 recommendations. Again, just making note that we obviously, because we haven't done fully a design phase yet of these buildings, this all ties to what the budget would be. We're still looking, we have a budget in mind, but this would all need to fall within that budget to ensure that we can do all of this within phase 1. Second slide, or next slide, Nick, thank you. And then phase 2 we would be proposing, probably looking at least 5 years out for this to happen. It comes with growth of our students, but we would look at a new 7th, 8th grade building, which we would call our junior high building. This would be located on the Canal Winchester Middle School campus. If you recall, when SHP presented during October and November, he shared, definitely I believe in November, he shared some site plans of what the middle school was supposed to have back when it was built. And so it did show the second site of another building. 5th grade would then move from Winchester Trail to the middle school, which would allow that to be a 5th, 6th grade building. That would allow space then at Winchester Trail for growth. And then the 7th, 8th building. Next slide, please. Then you also have the updated Canal Winchester Middle School athletic facilities. This would provide a full upgrade of all of the current facilities, as well as potential any additions that we would need to have that maybe were talked about with SHP during what was the initial middle school field, but also we would look at going from a 6 to an 8 lane track. We would add lighting to the stadium. We would provide water access. We would add restrooms, a press box. We would add visitor bleachers. and we would add a concession stand. The other thing to note, I know there's been a lot of talk about the middle school football field. One of the things that we're currently looking at if we do all of that in phase one, we're probably looking at starting this work this summer. So after the spring season would end, getting it done this summer to start making sure it would be done, the majority of the work by the following spring. With that being said, we probably wouldn't have a practice spot at the high school for the football team. So we would probably need to look at having the middle school playing on their field. Mike Britch in our maintenance department is looking and working with experts on what we would need to do to that field to get it grass currently and playable and upgraded. It would not mean the facilities around it. It's not going to upgrade, obviously, all of these things that we would do looking at when we go with a new building. But that would be something that we would at least get it up and running for that to happen. And then the other thing I didn't mention on here is a turf field at the middle school. That could be an option that we discuss. I just don't want to put it into play until we know, but that could be also something that could be updated at that time. And then within that as well, that 5-year range, we're also looking at a new competition gym at the high school. And I know we've discussed some that a competition gym would go into a field house. We really believe that if we have a competition gym, it would be something that we would need to add on to the high school. So down the road, at that point in time, when we're looking at a new building, we would also have conversations with a new competition gym at the high school. I know that's a lot that I just handed out to you. One thing to note is, and Nick will have some conversations a little bit, I believe, about this. We have talked about this at board meetings for, I think, even before, probably the last year. But one of the things we would need to do if we're looking at a new 7-8 building, we would definitely have to go out for a bond. So we would be looking at doing phase one using funds that we currently have. Basically, we would be paying for that, not going out to our community and having a vote on a levy for that. For the junior high project and the competition gym, those are things that we would definitely need to go out for a bond for. And so that time would be something in that plan. That's why we say that would be probably 5 years down the road. Questions, comments, thoughts? After this agenda item, you'll notice there is a discussion item. So we'll move into that, which allows the board an opportunity to discuss, share their thoughts, feelings, or ask any questions.
I'll ask. I would say for phase one, I've been involved in the planning process or in the master planning process, but I would say for phase one, there's a lot to chew on with what's been proposed, and I will say I would not be okay with half measures on a performing arts center to get all of the rest of the stuff. So understanding if we put a performing arts center, we've got to move the baseball and the softball fields, understand that. But I want to be really conscious and really upfront about not taking half measures on the performing arts center to try to get all the rest of the stuff in phase one done.
Thank you. And I'm glad you brought that up because we're 100% behind that thought. We did not go through all of this, and we're not going to spend the money that we're going to spend and put in a half rate anything. I mean, when we're looking at whether we do the Performing Arts Center or when we do the field house, we don't want to do something halfway. We want to do it right the first time, and we want to make sure that we're getting, really the word state-of-the-art facilities, we want to make sure we're getting state-of-the-art facilities. It might not be the Taj Mahal, right? But we're going to get what we need in those facilities. So thank you for making that point. Appreciate that.
In addition to that, in regard to the PAC, I just want to make sure that we're intentional about the inclusivity that you mentioned earlier on in the presentation, and that not only that we're ADA compliant, but we are being mindful of making sure that the experience will be equitable for all of our students. And also hopefully comfortable as well. Because I know the picture, it is just an idea, but yes. I didn't really like the seating, I guess, in the picture. I still think they were too small and too tight together, but I just want to be mindful of that, to keep that in mind. So I do echo Board Member George's comment about just making sure that we
design the PAC up to the standards that we expect, especially with all the investment monies that are going into it, that we don't want to, cut it short or, so.
Thank you. Yep.
I agree with both those comments. Growth projections, can we just go over those real quick in terms of just some easy numbers? You're talking about 5 years from now, building on to the middle school, current middle school, just so that we're all up to date with those numbers, I guess, first. Kind of putting you on the spot. Do you have any idea on those?
I don't see a building in 5 years. I mean, is that what you said, it was 5?
Well, at least
think you
5.
start
We're looking
planning.
5.
Sure.
Yeah, the planning,
I
we're
think
gonna
the
have to look
planning
5,
of it
7,
starts
yeah.
happening in 5 to 6 years. You wouldn't be able to go get a levy until, I'll show you in a second, until 2032, 33 range. So it's probably 9 years before you would probably break ground, 7 years planning, 6 years planning. And we don't know enrollment yet. I mean, kindergarten numbers are going to dictate where that takes us. Birth rates were high this year, and we came in at 240. We think there's some reasons for that, but we won't know until next year. Are we going to see a kindergarten class of 250, 260 again with high birth rates and what we're expecting to come in because we see about 40 kids come back in first grade? We didn't see that this year, so we could see a kindergarten class of 310 next year. If that happens, then it does streamline up through. If for some reason we stay in the 250 to 280 range with a kindergarten class, does that grow throughout like we have been doing over the last 20 years? I mean, a kindergarten class comes in at 220. By the time they graduate, they're 300. Does that trend continue? We're going to have to take the numbers that we see in the next 5 to 6 years and really develop the plan. We said that, I think, a couple years ago. We wouldn't know exactly what would happen for a 2-grade level building. We don't know what the private school side is going to do. Legislation continues to expand that. I mean, if the private school voucher thing wasn't a thing right now, we would probably need a 2-grade level building right now. Because the 2020 census says that we had close to 4,500 students. That should be K-12 right now. And we have those. They're just, some are homeschooled, some are charter, some are private, some are autism placed, scholarships. I mean, they're a little bit all over the board. Do you start seeing more of those kids return, or does that keep expanding? There's just so many unknowns at this point. But it's got to be on our radar, I think, as a phase 2 to be able to pull it off, or if it's not on our radar, we're never going to be able to build it and communicate the message. So it's more the messaging now, I think, that this is a possibility, and we've got our eyes on it. Because K-5, we're fine. We said that with Indian Trail Edition. K-5, we're going to be fine with growth. But 6, 7, 8 building has always been our tightest building, and it's going to see a little bit of relief over the next few years. But if you start seeing the 300 to 320 kindergarten classes, like we could see, especially if there's some development that happens in Canal, Winchester, then you're going to see those 330, 340 classes back, and it's too big for the middle school on how it's constructed. So we've got about 5 years, 6 years before I can give you a solid answer on whether that 2-grade level building is going to be needed, but I think we're going to look at that data every single year and then determine what the likelihood moving forward is at that point.
Okay. Competition gym, number of seats that are currently in that gym. You were on.
Yeah.
Oh, I was on. I believe, what did we say? I'd be guessing, I'd go off memory. I want to say 1,800. I want to say 1,800.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't believe we've come close in years. So that's something that we've had discussion on, to remove the bleachers. There, it wouldn't create an issue for us, because we would only really be removing the bleachers on the one side for this team, and then the opposite side we would replace to be ADA compliant.
Okay.
And that's a temporary.
That's to get us,
And so to get to the competition.
correct,
gym that
yeah,
we may do.
correct.
Okay. Football seating's already been approved, correct?
We're getting bids back on the 17th,
Okay.
so we'll see what the bids are.
Been
And
The
approved?
high school stadium seating,
Yes, high school
in
stadium
the sense
seating.
of,
yeah, it's through the city. We're receiving bids. It was a bid package was,
I'm saying it was board approved?
no,
It was not. Okay, I thought it was a board approved before we
no,
were
the
on.
planning of it was approved
Okay,
to
okay.
do the drawings.
That's
and
my fault, and I didn't
Once the
realize
bids
that.
come in, we'll have to approve the official contracts.
Okay.
and-
All right. And then, I'm thrilled to hear that we're doing something about that middle school football field. I think, you know, that's something that has been, needed. I thought it was interesting, we had press box on there, for a new press box at that middle school football field.
possibly.
Okay.
So
So those are just
those are all
possibilities.
possibilities that could happen.
Okay.
We don't know what it's gonna look like when we get to that point, so
Okay.
those are all potential possibilities.
Okay.
Or
I guess, and the
existing
reason
one
I'm,
might be renovated or something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Right,
if it's,
right.
if it needs to be built, whatever.
Okay, and
Yeah, so
going
none
off
of
of,
it-
going
none
off
of
of
this
Ms.
is set in stone.
Tally's
So,
comments
yeah.
about the PAC, I'm also asking about some specifics, that's
Yep.
all, so.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just like to say that I too have been participating in the planning meetings, and I like what I see. I like all the conversation that's been around this discussion, and how Nick and Kai have been working together to give us ideas on how this could all be moved around, and just going through the whole process of looking at what's currently there. I know one of the big things that I saw at the last planning meeting was, why is the field house in the middle of that space, and could we use that, reutilize that space, and why bring in equipment a second time if we could do this all in one fell swoop? It's costly to do piece by piece by piece if we can put it together, and if there's an impact on building this building, what it is, and if it's impacting the rest of the other facilities, then the best thing, money-wise and spending-wise, to me, would be not to duplicate spending in the construction, but to try to do as much as possible while those machines are here. So I like seeing the plan that you guys have put together. And the questions are good, too. I appreciate that.
Yeah, we won't know everything that you can do. I got rough numbers Friday because we didn't want to propose something. I was told that a 20,000 square foot PAC should cost around $9.2 million all in. A performing or a athletic facility at the size of 20 to 25,000 square feet should cost somewhere in the $6 million range. If that's true, that's $15 million. We're looking to borrow the $15 million. We've got some other funds sitting there that gives us about $4 million to move the fields, to move, to maybe get the tennis court, to do the roadways, to do all those things. I mean, so it could be tight on some of the options, but we wanted to lay it all out to see. I mean, obviously the athletic facility and moving the field to PAC would be top options. Tennis court and some of those things would prioritize down, and maybe look at doing them later or with permanent improvement dollars or whatever. And there's no guarantee we get the loan at this point. I mean, they quoted a rate, and at this point we'll let it go through. And if it comes back to the rate we like, then we'll go get the money and invest like we did last time and make $1 million on the interest earnings from it, and that would add to our pot to be able to have a stronger budget. Because we definitely want to weigh out the pros and cons and plan this out. You're going to be spending over $18 million. You definitely want to make sure you get the things that you want, because we only have one chance to make this right. So we're going to look at every option. I mean, right now it's just colored boxes on a sheet of paper. Those colored boxes may change, they may get relocated. But the point is, you're going to probably get a new baseball field, new softball fields, new athletic facility of some sort, and a PAC. And the high school site would be 95% complete. I know everybody wants a competition gym, or it's been kind of on the kind of stacking block to do. But at some point, do you add that to a 1976 building? At some point, we start thinking about, maybe it's not a 2 grade level building later. Maybe it becomes a high school project. Those are the things that we don't know right at the time to know what to do with that millage later. Because the middle school is what, 2008, trails are 2002, high school, at the end of the day, is the oldest building with some newer wings. I think it'll hold up, but time will tell whether it does. So there's just so many unknowns. And where do you build the the athletic gym to it? I mean, PAC is going to take up quite a bit of space. So we're going to focus on the things that we know for certain right now, and then you're going to prioritize the rest.
So, and then just, I kind of want to make this point, and Nick, if you'll back me up, but our intent through the planning process was, you know, ideally we get through this process without levying any additional tax dollars against our constituents.
Correct. That's the
So-
goal. We will not levy
Yeah.
for,
And that's why we're
Athletic.
pushing the middle school, the middle school site, that's why we're pushing that out to kind of correspond with the end of our existing bonds, which then we may go out and request to replace those bonds once they expire.
correct.
So I just want
Yes.
to make sure and kind of make sure that everybody who's listening to the meeting understands that we're, you know, our attempt in this process was to ensure that we maintain financial stability while not levying any new tax dollars, at least as we're planning through this process, not levying any new tax dollars against against the constituents.
Yeah, you didn't cue me for this. You didn't call me before the meeting or anything. I just happened to have this, so it's coincidence that you're asking that question. But here's to your point. Our bond started off at 10.8. It's at 7.25. It's going to continue to decline as the values go up because bonds are a fixed rate. So you only levy as much money you have to pay the debt payment. Tax year 2033, calendar year 2034, the debt is gone. We'll be down to 2782 at that point, and that's conservative. I mean, we went from 51 to 35 in that time period. This is 35 to 27. I just can't assume we're going to continue to have $100 million valuation increases. So I was conservative here to know that this is going to keep declining because these 2 levies are fixed and they're going to keep going down. The emergency started off at 14.7. It's now at 8.16. It's going to continue to decline. So taxpayers are going to continue to pay less and less and less as we move forward. So at this point, I mean, you could realistically go anywhere from 4 to 8 mills, and it'd probably be acceptable to taxpayers, especially at that time being almost 25 years without levying new debt or new levies. So we're blessed really to be in this situation. There's not a lot of school districts that are in this situation with the cash balance we have, with the millage that's going to be falling off, and the lower tax rates that's kind of into the future that we're going to have. So we're really sitting in a spot to where we don't want to mess it up, to be quite honest. I mean, we're in a situation where we can make this district really, really great. The facility's really great. We just need to make sure the plan that we have in place is the right one.
Okay, and I just wanted to kind of be clear on the middle school fields. So I understand that intervention, there's some things that are being looked at now to hopefully make those fields a little bit more playable. But then I heard Mrs. Hunt kind of justify it as for the high school players while they're displaced to do practicing.
No, currently, we have the middle school come to the high school to play games. And when that happens, my understanding is that then the varsity football team moves off of the turf field from practice and practices in green space. So what that would mean is we probably won't have green space for them to push off of the turf field to practice on if we move into this where we're redoing the fields. And so at that point, middle school will probably need to go back to the middle school for their games, because if the varsity team will need a place to practice,
Okay,
if that
gotcha.
makes sense.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes. I was just wanting to make sure that our middle school students were not being disenfranchised in any way, and that their experiences while they're here are optimal as much as we can make it. And that kind of ties into my question. Is it possible to concurrently work on the aspects of phase one while we also address the needs for the middle school, as far as not the new building, but the fields? Is that an option to concurrently do both? Because I know we won't even address the middle school till phase two.
Yeah, so we are already taking that. So the field's been, I think it's called winterized. I'm not sure. You could probably piggyback, but Mike Rich at our facilities department has treated the field, will be treating the field, and then the plan is they reseed it, and they'll come back in the spring, do the same thing, roll it, and get it to a point where it's better, like playable.
So essentially, this could have been something that could have already been done prior to.
Potentially. The one thing that everybody so a couple of things. We had the roughest summer with dry weather that we've had. So that field is probably in the worst case it can be. Another thing that when we had our conversations and our open meetings, we had groups come and share that back, and again, I don't know the timeline, but let's say the baseball field, this was a great example. The baseball field right now has some mounds to it. It's over 30 years old. So that's the varsity baseball field. This is another example. So we talked, we walked. One of the things that was said is that back in the day, a parent that was I believe a pastor, again, this is just what I heard, would take care of the field because that's what he wanted to do. Well, at some point, those parents, the kids graduate, and so they're not there anymore. Well, the lack of communication, whether who knows what side, but as soon as parents are going to take care of it or the coaches are going to take care of it and the district doesn't, and there's not a conversation, then the field isn't taken care of. As soon as you don't take care of a field for a year, it's going to be really tough or expensive to get back up. I believe that's what happened. I think a lot of this was that we have great parents and great people who had the abilities to take care of fields, but then once they moved on and they weren't taking care of the fields, they didn't get taken care of. So we also need to develop the plan with our maintenance department on who is going to take care of the fields, what's going to be done to them, and that's something that, our current maintenance department, they're not experts in the baseball field keeping, so to speak, using that as an example. So talking with experts on what should we do, what can we do. We actually have a community member parent that's what he is an expert in, and he has offered to chat with us and talk with us and consult with us to learn more and to ensure that we have our fields up to date. So will it have our middle school field be like a brand new field? Probably not, but will it be playable? That's the hope. So that's, I hope that helps.
Yeah, and there'll be a plan moving forward so we don't repeat the past mistakes.
Correct.
And to answer the other part of your question is, when you said, is this upgrading the facility for the football field something that we could do now? This upgrade will not include things like lighting, water, restrooms, any of those types of things. It's just upgrading the field. So those things would still be pushed off till whenever we do the addition to that facility.
And then potentially the extra space that was discussed in various advisory group meetings, you're looking at that happening with the addition of a new building, correct?
Extra
Like new
space.
instructional spaces?
Yes, that would come with the new building. Yep. Specific to the middle, like junior high, middle school,
Yes.
obviously.
Yes.
Yep.
And then my other question was, what is the justification for 9 tennis courts? You mentioned we have a total of 9 tennis courts.
Yep. Additional space for practice, that was one of the things that came out. We don't have to do that. That's just a part of the plan. One of the things that if we did have more court space, we could host some of the larger tournaments. So we could host sectionals, regional districts. Some of those would give us an opportunity.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thank
there's
you.
some other things going on. I mean, we talk about the middle school football field. The school football, I've walked it a couple of times. It's really not that bad. It's more lumpy than anything. I think if you roll it, it'll be fine. Right now, the middle school gym is by far probably worse than the actual field, and we have a plan for that, to sand it down to the wood and redo it, repaint it, and really brand the middle school gym. We've got the flooring quotes, we're gonna be painting it, and then do some branding with that. But they're temporarily waxing it right now, I think, to make
So
it
that's something
somewhat
that we could be working
playable.
on now?
Yeah, we are gonna be working
Okay.
on it now. Yeah, as soon as school's out, our goal is to sand the floor down and redo it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
But it's being waxed right now to make it.
Just
It
to
got
make it
waxed
more
this past
playable,
weekend.
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
waxed.
It's really, I went out and walked it the other day, it's slick. It is not a good situation, but.
And that's, I guess, part of my point too, is we just need to make sure that we're thinking forward on this, and these things aren't happening. I received several calls and texts and emails about this. I know we all received one, but, you know, that mill's, I'm glad to hear that it's being addressed. But we need to be a little more proactive, obviously. And that's another point with the press box. I think the press box over there is bigger and better than the one at the high school field. And we could utilize that money into some irrigation or something over there too. So, but anyway, that's future thought.
Yeah, the problem with the middle school site is when you start saying, well, let's turf it. And then it's like, well, we only have 6 lanes of track. Well, okay. And then we don't have lights. And then no visitors bleachers. Then you just keep stacking up multiple issues. Every time you say, well, let's just do this part of it then there's always another secondary, but we don't have storage. So that's why it needs to be a larger project, because we don't have any storage. We need to expand. I think one side bleachers are probably fine, but they need to be bigger on that side. So I don't know if we're gonna have room for visitor lockers on the other side, especially when you go 2 more lanes of track to the inside. We need water there. There's no current water to that site. So there's just a lot of different aspects to that site that wasn't done, that cost a lot of money to do, and it just makes sense to do it as far as a phase 2, make the fields and everything as playable and as safe as you can right now, and then better them later.
One last, I want to say one thing too, is that all this talk about athletics, and yet the PAC, I feel like, is the one thing that seems like it's pretty solid. So,
Yes, yeah,
you
it's
know,
number one
there's a
on the
lot
list.
more moving parts with the athletics, so there's
Correct.
a lot more conversation about that, but I know that we're all excited to see the PAC. So.
Yeah, the athletics is a yay. We might get to also accomplish this as part of phase 1. I think the PAC is it's a fixed thing that's happening.
Certainly. Is there any further discussion on the master facilities planning? If not, we'll move on to public voice. Do we have any public voice
We do not.
speaking? All right, thank you, Mrs. Hunt. Now we're on to executive reports. Mr. Roberts?
Good evening. I'm just gonna keep rolling into the project, the loan possibly, and then the moving of the inside millage, which we're gonna have a resolution on the agenda, action items later, just to be able to notice the public hearing. We've talked a lot about the inside millage. I just kind of wanted to throw this together to show what it actually means. This is our current situation. We have 20 mills, 20 mil tax rate that is dedicated toward current expense. 4.5 of those is inside mills. We have 5 inside mills total. That is divvied out by the county, or we've been 5 probably since the tax rate system began. The rest of this is voted, 30.91 mils. So you got 15.5 current, 8.16 emergency, 7.1 bond, none for PI, because we've never voted that. If we move the 1.5 mils like we're suggesting we do, inside millage for current expense would become 3. PI becomes 2. Increase of 1.5, decrease 1.5. What happens is,
PI stands for permanent improvement.
permanent
right?
improvement, yes.
Okay.
Or Magnum. So, sorry. So the 1.5 would drop us to 18.5. The state law is 20 mil floor. So that would create the 1.5 unvoted millage. So you cannot drop below 20 mils on this current expense. Moving that out to permanent improvement drops this to 18.5. That comes into play. That's why we have to have the public hearing. But this is why we've waited for this time, because 1.5 mils of debt is expiring. So it becomes a replacement to where the millage is 35.91, even with that moving. Does that make sense? I tried to make that as simple to understand. And it says that right here, but the biggest thing is when you move that out, this drops to 18.5 and it has to come back to 20. And the county auditor would do that. So if we did not have the 1.5 dropping off, that would be an increase on taxes. You do not want to do that. So that's why we've waited to tax year 25 for the debt to fall off so we could replace that with the inside millage move. This really sets us up for the future. Guys, none of this, though, what we've talked about is possible without moving this inside millage. Without a dedicated permanent improvement levy moving forward, the district is too large to maintain. With all the athletic fields, with all the buildings, I mean, we were having to replenish buses and equipment and mowers and update the buildings. It becomes very difficult, and we cannot put that burden on the general fund long-term. Really what you're doing is replacing, you're gonna say, we're not able to do these projects, we're gonna have to put money into our permanent improvement to fund that. This helps us, this is just another step of us being able to do the facility plan. And it really locks the future up for this school district for a long time without really raising taxes to the taxpayers. Transparently, I wanted to do it before we hit the floor, but the taxes, the valuations took off and they skyrocketed and I couldn't keep up with it. And we went to the 20 mil floor much quicker than anyone would have expected. Our values went up 250 million in 3 years, and that really took us from 23 mils to 20 mils in 3 years. So we hit the floor a lot quicker than I anticipated. No one would have thought our values were going to go that high. And keep in mind, this is only going to impact Class 1. So residential and agricultural, Class 1, they're the only ones at the floor. Class 2, industrial and commercial, are not at the 20 mil floor. So this inside millage move has zero impact to Class 2 rates. It's Class 1, residential and agricultural, who it impacts the most and is going to have the most to say in a public hearing. But this is very beneficial and very important to the school district to move this so we've got the funding moving forward, and then we're able to do these other projects and set the district up for a really nice future with some nice facilities. Any questions on the tax rates and the inside millage moving? Thank you. That's all I have tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Mrs. Hunt, do you have a report for us this evening?
My report is going to be very quick because it's kind of crazy to think that we've only had 12 school days since our last board meeting. So when you look at it that way, it's not a whole lot to report. And Miss Amy Irwin did such a great job on her report. She did the few things that I did have to share, she stole or borrowed or took advantage of. But just, we're moving into, I believe we have 9 school days left before the holiday break. Winter athletics at the middle school and the high school are full go, and the activities and fun things happening. I am very excited. I will be attending the Nutcracker with this Indian Trail students on Friday. So I get to take a small trip and go to that. This is year 3 and truly enjoy it. It's fun. All the kids get dressed up. It's awesome. I really enjoy it, so I'm glad I'm still invited. So that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, our board committee reports. First up is CWJRD.
Nothing?
I don't have anything.
All right.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. For the legislative report, the Ohio General Assembly has just about 2 weeks left to get their priority legislation to the governor's desk before the holidays. There has been a lot of legislative activity occurring in both chambers as we approach the end of lame duck. Both the Senate and House Education Committees heard a presentation from the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce on the report cards, college, career, workforce, and military readiness measure. A first hearing was held regarding House Bill 518, which is the bill that would enact the School Bus Safety Act. Lastly, I'm reporting that the Department of Education and Workforce and the State Board of Education have no rules open for public comment at this time. And then we have our final committee report coming from Ms. Green, Student Achievement Liaison.
Nothing to report.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments in regards to the district reports?
Yeah, I have one thing. I would like to ask all the building principals if you would start to gather some data and be able to present that in the next month's reports for each one of your buildings. And that would be, I would like to see a comparison of about 3 years. I was hoping that maybe Mayor Steger would be here tonight to kind of echo what I'm saying. He and I have had a couple conversations. I've had other conversations with other people in the community, and I think there's some concerns from the past, and I want to hopefully put those to bed. So I think if we can put that data out there for everybody. So I know at the end of the semester for the high school and the middle school, and then the elementaries on trimesters. So I think all that information could be in the January district reports, and I think that would be interesting for us to be able to say and share with the community. Behavior, did I say that?
No.
I'm sorry. Thank you. So looking for behavior data is what I'm looking for. And then be able to compare it to show it sounds like things are moving in the right direction. And I would like to know in those conversations why they're moving in the right direction, what we're doing intentionally for that. You know, just anything that you guys are having conversations about in your building at the admin level, and be able to report back to us next month. Thank you.
For the transportation, I noticed they entered into a voluntary program with the TSA, the SAFE program, that essentially it does an informal audit of the safety of our transportation system, our busing. Gives us some reports back on the results of that audit, and then also gives us some steps to move forward to help ourselves in that realm. And I would just like to say, I mean, for as much good or as much bad as you see from the busing situation in other districts in Central Ohio, for my part, you know, our transportation group, our bus drivers, the transportation admins, they do an exceptional job of moving our students in and out of our schools safely, to field trips, athletic events, and then this is just one more way that they're going, in my mind, above and beyond to enter into a voluntary program that really will get us a good hard look from external eyes at what the safety of our busing program looks like. So I appreciate the Transportation Office being proactive about getting involved with that.
I just have a general announcement, a community announcement that if you know of any kids or families in need, Firefighters for Kids is providing signups right now for kids up to age 12 at the Greater Southeast Area Commission on Thursday from 6 to 8. And if you would let your students or their parents know in whatever manner or way, that they can go there and sign up, that would be great. I think there's information out on the website too for that commission area.
Thank you. And I did see in our reports that I know our students are entering into the state testing season, and I'd be interested to know the status of that, of how our students are measuring up. Do you know when we'll be able to find out the results?
Mr. Whitlatch? So with our kids in state testing, can you tell us when we'll be receiving results from that?
We received our third grade results. I think I put a little snippet in the board report. So our third grade results from the fall came back. Our high school EOC will be back right around the end of February, middle of February, for the students taking for the second time, or for our students that just joined our district from out of state. They have requirements to take algebra and ELA too, so they'll be their first attempt.
Thank you. And then I had one more question. Could you explain a little bit more about the explicit instruction?
Mr. Lautenschlager.
I thought that was very interesting.
Sure. So, as part of the promise, good evening. As part of the promise, we wanted to provide professional development for administrators on topics that they could take instantly back to their teachers. So, explicit instruction is not a new concept. It's, oh gosh, it's been around for a while, but Anita Archer is the researcher. And so we wanted to show these elements of explicit instruction to really make everything crystal clear for when the teacher's in front of her students or his students. And so there's 16 elements of these explicit instructions that as principals, when they're going through their walkthroughs, that they can look to see, is the teacher doing this? And what Deb, Bill, and I have done at these administrative meetings is model what some of these behaviors and strategies could look like. If you click on that link, it goes to the explicit instruction website that we've shared with the principals. And Anita Archer is this practitioner researcher. So she actually does all of the things that she models and teaches with actual kids. And so what we walked our administrators through is what those strategies look like, how you can start to do that with the staffs. And so for the last 2 months, that's what we've been doing with our principals. And Deb, Bill, and I have met to plan what next month's strategy session will look like too.
And the kinds of strategies and things that you're doing, is that going to be tracked? So you can see if there's going to be, like what the impact of it is?
That would be a great end result. That's something that we're still talking about. The third and final month of explicit instruction, we'll kind of talk about what those progress monitoring tools could look like.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move into our consent agenda. I move to approve the consent agenda items, and is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Starting with number 2, we have our minutes from our November 18th meeting. Number 3 is donations. We do have 4 different donations. We have donations from Wayne and Melissa Berner to the High School Rocketry Club, Dorothy and Ronnie Stackpole to the Science Olympiad, Joe Donahue to Middle School Athletics for girls basketball, and the Indian Touchdown Club for high school athletics football. Number 4, we do have a certified personnel for extended days. That's one of our psychologists. We are down 1 psychologist this year. We had a psychologist resign at the beginning of the school year, very close to the start of school, and so some of our psychologists are picking up the work that that individual would need to cover. So we're adding those extended days. Number 5 is classified personnel. We have resignations here. We do have a request for unpaid leave, and we have recommendations for a bus driver, custodian, and an aide. as well as a substitute bus driver. Number 6 is our supplemental personnel. We have wrapping up some fall positions that we are approving, and Brady Brennan as our high school play director. And number 7, we have our new student activity charter for African Club at the middle school, which is, the advisor would be Jay Battle.
All right, any questions, comments? Hearing none, Mr. Roberts?
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Next, we have our first action item, resolution authorizing notice of public hearing. And is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
I'll second.
We talked about this a little bit. All this does is allow us to notice this in the newspaper. We're required to notice it for 2 weeks. The public hearing will be at the February regular board meeting. I think that was the 9th or the 10th? Whatever. We'll have to approve it. It's not out on the website right now anyway. Organizational meeting will approve those dates, but planning on the second Monday, February 10th, is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, to have this public hearing, but it will be in the paper for 2 weeks noticing what we're doing, so.
All right, very good. Will you please call the roll?
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next action item, I move to approve resolution authorizing the board to enter into a base lease of school district land and facilities.
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
This resolution allows us to move forward with a borrowing $50 million loan, but it does not guarantee that we have to move forward. If the rate comes back higher than we want it to, we would come back most likely with a different resolution once we do secure the rate and have the loan documentation at that time.
All right.
Well, I got a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Will you run that past us on what the rate is before you move forward, or will you just do that based on your?
We'll move forward, but then we'll have the resolution to approve.
Okay, so there'll
The
be
loan,
another
yeah.
request. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This just allows us to move forward if the bank comes back and says, this is the rate we're gonna provide to you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Mr. Roberts?
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Motion carries. Our next action item, I need a motion to approve swimming as an Ohio High School Athletic Association school-sanctioned sport at Canal, Winchester.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Last month, we approved to have it as a club. We've discussed this over the last couple months. We would like to go ahead and approve it as a school-sanctioned sport through OHSAA, starting with the 25-26 school year. So that would be next year. This gives us time to plan and really prepare for the swimming becoming a sport.
Mr. Jacobs, do you have anything you'd like to add to this?
No, I think
I appreciate you guys hearing out our proposal for offering this as an official sport for our young people. I think this means a lot for our young people. A lot of them come in, seeing me and wanting to advocate for this opportunity. Really appreciate you considering it. I think this does give our kids an opportunity to look forward to something long-lasting. The Summers have done a great job laying the foundation for the program. This ushers in another era of good swimmers for our community.
With this program,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a advocate for swimming, and so with this program, will we have a feeder program that would feed the school district at the JRD level, and is there one that already exists? And then where would the students, just for everybody else's information, where would the students be doing their practicing at? And are we going to try to build that program more, to get more kids involved in swimming?
As of right now, the high school level would be our primary focus for transitioning this sport into an official recognized sport for our school district. We already currently compete on the OSHA level, so this would be a change internally for us. The hope is with adding a supervisor or a coach to this program, it will allow us access to now reach out to our younger student athletes and get them involved. I'm not sure exactly what that will look like for us. The facility we currently are using is through Groveport Recreation Center.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Roberts?
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next up, we have our final reading of the board policy. I need a motion to approve the policy that had a first reading at the November 2024 board meeting.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. So we did have our first reading and reviewed at the November board meeting, so no changes were made. So just looking for final approval.
Any questions, comments regarding the policy? Hearing none, Mr. Roberts?
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item is organizational meeting date. I move to approve the organizational meeting date as January 13th, 2025 at 6:45 PM. And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, concerns? Hearing none, Mr. Roberts?
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next action item, we need to elect a president pro temp. And is there a motion?
I'll motion to elect Angela Barnes.
And is there a second? I'll second. Mr. Roberts?
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next on our agenda, there is a need to enter into executive session. I move to enter into executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts?
Mrs. Talley?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Motion carries. This concludes our public portion, but we will enter into executive session. No decisions will be made. And we will then reconvene into open session just to adjourn. But we'll take a brief recess prior to entering into executive session. We thank you all for coming, and we hope you have a happy holidays coming up.